Okay, so this is the decomposition of hydrogen peroxide experiment for Chemistry 1420. The first step says to set up the experiment as it shows in the picture. Well, the picture is okay, but it's in black and white, so we're going to just look at the setup here first. And so if you look over here, we have our distillation flask, okay, with the stir bar is already in there, and you can see it comes up and it has a side port of glass. Okay, this is in a beaker because we're going to eventually fill the beaker with water to use as a constant temperature bath. On the top of here, we're going to put one of these septum stoppers, and we'll show you how to do that later. So off of this side port, we have a little bit of a hose here, and if you can get down in here, it's hooked to the bottom of this tray. Okay, so you can see that. Okay, so the tray goes up and it goes to a hole here in the top of the tray. So the gas that gets formed is going to come up, bubble through there. We've got a little burette funnel that's going to fit on top of that. And again, this tray will be full with water. And then we're going to use a burette. It says to put a cork on the top of the burette. So we've done that on the 0 mark. And we're going to fill the burette with water. And we're going to put it over top of the burette funnel. And then we're going to clamp it in our burette clamp so that all the gas will eventually, that comes out of this, will be collected here, and we'll be able to read the volume of gas as it goes into the burette. Okay, so that's kind of going to be the setup. So now we're going to pause it, and we're going to fill this with water, and we're going to show you how to fill the burette with water, and then we'll get the sample ready, and we'll be ready to do a run. Okay, so we have filled our beaker here with some water for our thermostatic bath here to keep the temperature constant, and we filled our tray with water. So the other thing we have to fill with water is the burette. Okay, so in order to do this and keep it without any air in it and get it set up, we got to fill the burette with water. So I've got a little beaker here. I'm going to fill this all the way through. Bit of time. Doing this actually pretty well that I haven't spilled water all over myself. Okay, so we're going to get it all the way to the top. Okay, it has a little bit of water there over the top. I'm going to put my finger on it, and then I'm going to turn it upside down in the tray of water and remove my finger, and no air bubbles got in. Now I have to get it on top of the burette funnel, over top of the hole, and then clamped. So this will take a little bit of work. I need to switch my hands around here. Okay, so I'm going to lean this over. I'm putting in the burette funnel. I don't know if you can see that, but we got that in, and then we tip that up, and it looks like we're okay. And we're going to clamp the burette here, and then I just got to make sure that the thing is over the hole. And now this, one of the key things here is if this is a tight seal here where the burette and the burette funnel come together, well, when the gas comes up, there's no way for the water to leak out back into the tray. So we need to lift this up just a little bit so that the burette funnel here moves a little bit, so there's a little bit of a gap there for the water to escape. Alright, so now we've got our setup ready to go, and so we're going to pause it again, and then we're going to go ahead and get our sample made and get ready for the first trial. Okay, so we're ready now to get our sample prepared, and I think this is step 3 in the lab manual. And so we need to pipette the peroxide. So I've got a 5 mil pipette, so this is for the first run. We've got our hydrogen peroxide. This is just store-bought, and so it's 3% hydrogen peroxide, and I've poured some into a beaker here. And so I'm going to pipette it and put it into our flask. And the main thing is when we put it in the flask, I don't want to get it into the side arm here. So I got to do pipetting, and as I mentioned on the previous video, I'm sure you're all sad that you don't get a chance to do more pipetting here, but All right. Now you may or may not be able to see when we get down to the meniscus, but you'll again just have to trust me a little bit that we're right on. All right. So then I'm going to put that into the flask. And this one's kind of hard to let it run down the side just because it's, but you want to make sure you're not getting it into the side arm here. Of course, since it's a 5 mil, so it has a smaller tip, so it takes a little while longer to drain all the way out. Okay. And then it says to add 14 milliliters of water from a graduated cylinder, so we've got that already pre-measured. So I'm going to add that. And again, I'm going to try to make sure it doesn't get into the side arm. Okay. Now, in order to make this gas tight, we have to put on a septum stopper. Okay, so the septum is right here, and then the outer part goes over the edge. Now, you haven't done this, and unfortunately you won't get a chance to do this, but you put the septum into the top, and then you have to fold over the edges. If you try to grab it like this, it's probably not going to work all that well. The easiest way to do this is you grab it, fold one side down, use your thumb or finger from the hand to hold one side down, and then you take the other one and kind of go around like that. Okay. Now I'm very much of an expert because my graduate school research did this all the time. So I am very good at putting on a septum stopper. All right, so now it's completely sealed. It's gas tight. We're going to add the potassium iodide using a syringe. So we're going to show you how to use a syringe in the next part. Okay, so we have our syringe. I've removed the guard on the needle. Of course, this is one of the few times that you can actually, we have to worry about injection as a route of entry for chemical exposure. Okay, so this is a 5 milliliter syringe, or 5 cc, cubic centimeter syringe. All right, so in order to get this to work, we need to draw up our liquid, and we have our solution. It's 1 molar potassium iodide, and you can see it here. I poured some into a beaker. All right, so I'm going to draw up some of the solution. I'm going to draw up more than 1 milliliter, and then I'm going to lift it out, and I'm going to draw up some air. And the reason is to get all the solution out of the tip. I'm going to tip it over. I'm going to do the same thing just to make sure there's nothing into the tip. All right, so now I have to get the plunger up to the 1 milliline to measure. And I can go ahead and push up on the plunger because I know I'm not going to shoot any liquid out of the top because I've drawn air all the way through. So I'm going to push this up. And you can see the air coming up, and I've got a little bubble here. So I'm going to try to break that. Okay. And I'm going to go this, and you can even see it. You might be able to see even the liquid up into, if you can, maybe into the needle. Try to get all the air. That's pretty good. Now, when you see this in hospital shows and on TV, they push liquid out the top, and you can see I got a drop there. And now I'm going to turn that back over, and now I can see how close I am to the 1 mil line. All right, so I'm pretty close. And I'm going to go down to the 1 mil line with the first part of the rubber stopper. And so I'll turn it back over so you can see that. We're right at the 1 mil line. Okay? And so that's how you fill that without shooting liquid everywhere and chemicals everywhere. You know, on hospital shows and things like that, they shoot out the thing, but that's because most of the time it's saline or that kind of thing, that it's not, you know, and of course in a TV show it's probably just water, colored water. But we don't want to shoot chemicals, especially into our eyes or any of that kind of thing. So you got to be really careful with this. But that's how you use a syringe to measure out a liquid. Okay, so we've got our solution made up in the flask stirring. We've got our amount of Ki ready to go, and we've got our burette set up. Okay, so what's going to happen is I'm going to push the syringe through the septum. The Ki will go in. It's acting as a catalyst. So the reaction will then start. We'll film the reaction a little bit. We'll see the bubbles starting to come up into the burette. And then as we collect gas in the burette, we start the timer when it hits the 0 mark. Once it hits the 0 mark, we need to record the time it takes at every 2 milliliters. Now, you may or may not be able to see the 2 milliliters, and it's going to be kind of hard to read. I'll be reading that, and I'll be hitting the pause button essentially on the stopwatch. Okay, so we'll be having a stopwatch next to the burette, and when we do that, we'll have it start, and then every time we hit the 2 milliliters, we'll hit the lap time here, and it'll pause it so you can record the time, and then I'll hit the lap button again, and it was recording the elapsed time in the background. Now, one thing that it says to record is you're going to record this in minute seconds, okay, minute seconds, and eventually when we need to plot it, we're going to need to have it all in minutes or all in seconds, okay? But the stopwatch doesn't do that for us. All right, so we're getting ready to go. So I'm going to push this through the septum. Okay. We got to be careful when we do this. Hopefully we don't jab our fingers. All right, so we got it through septum. Okay, so I'm about ready to add the Ki. Okay, move the syringe. You can see the reaction. It turned a yellow color. Okay, and so it takes a little bit for it to get going, and it should then start producing bubbles here eventually. Like I say, there's a little bit of a lag time, and it'll start producing gas bubbles if we've done this correctly. Okay, you might be able to see them. They're just starting to form, and you can kind of see that in the thing here, this liquid level that's in the that was in the sidearm a little bit that got in there is starting to move away, which means we're forming gas, and it's creating more pressure that's forcing that out. And so now we're going to probably start to focus. You can again see all the bubbles here in the flask, so we're starting to get this going a little bit faster, and now eventually we'll start to see bubbles coming out of our gas collection tray and going up into the burette. And then we'll start the timer when it hits the 0 on the burette. So we just kind of have to wait for this a little bit. Now this first run is probably going to be the slowest run. Okay, you can start to see there's our bubbles coming up. Okay, so you can kind of see that. Alright, and so then we're going to start to focus on the top of the burette once we see this going through there. Okay, so you can see the bubbles floating up. You can see the top of the burette there. So we're collecting gas up at the top. That should be oxygen gas, hopefully. And we're going to start when we get to the 0 level on the burette. That's when we'll start the timer. And so we'll have the stopwatch here, and we'll start the timer once it gets down to the 0 level. And you're going to take, that's going to be your initial time. That'll be time 0. And then you'll record when I hit the lap timer every time it gets 2 milliliters. And so, okay. The one thing you always have to worry about with this experiment is sometimes the gas bubbles get trapped in the burette funnel. But it looks like we're going okay right now, so sometimes it can get stuck, but it looks like we're okay. All right, so we're getting closing in here. All right, now when you look at this, when you look at the meniscus, right, it's going to be hard to get it exactly on the 0 and the 2 milliliters, but we're going to, right, there's going to be a little bit of uncertainty here that we just have to deal with. Sometimes the bubbles don't always pop right away. Okay, so that's at the 0, so I started the timer. Now we just got to record the time when it gets down to the 2 minutes, or 2 milliliters, and then 4, 6, 8, so on and so forth. Okay, so that's the 2 milliliter time. Okay, so you've all recorded that. Now we're going to go down to the 4 milliliter time. Okay, so that's the 4 milliliter. Okay, everybody have that recorded? Okay, so that's the 6 milliliter time. Almost got stuck there, but we're still collecting. Is that the 8? Is that 8? Can't see. Yes. Okay, so there's the 8 minute or 8 milliliter time. That's the 10 milliliter. I don't know who has it harder, me or Dr. Pienta, who's holding the camera. We're trying to keep it steady for however long this is taking. Okay, so that's the 12 milliliter time. Okay, so 2 more readings to go. Okay, so that's the 14 milliliter time. We're going to take one more reading. We're probably going to keep collecting gas even after that, but what we're looking for in this experiment is what's called the initial rate. And so after 16 minutes, we're not going to be getting the initial rate anymore anyway. So we'll have enough data points at that point.
16 milliliters.
Yeah, 16. Oh, 16 milliliters. Yeah, it's been a little longer than that. Okay, and so that's the 16 milliliter mark. All right. Okay, so we've got our second solution made up, solution B. All right, I put in 10 milliliters of peroxide, so I pipetted that, I didn't show you it, and we added 9 mils of water. I have the same amount of Ki in the syringe, 1 milliliter. So we doubled the amount of peroxide, and so we're going to see how does that affect the rate. Do we get bubbles faster or slower? And then when we do the calculations, we'll figure out exactly how much faster. All right, so we're going to get ready here for this. So I'm going to put this back through. Now, if you're really good, you can find the same hole. Try to go through the same hole so you don't tear up your septa. All right, so we've got the Ki. We're going to go in. Okay, we can get it stirring. Okay, so the bubbles are forming in the flask there, and hopefully soon here we'll start seeing them come up in our funnel. Again, assuming we did this correctly. Okay, so there we go. Start to see that. Okay, and then we're going to go back, focus up here. We're going to start again at the 0 mark is when we'll start the timer. Okay, so you can see the bubbles collecting. Try to get my fingers out of the way there. Okay, so that's the start time. That's the 2 milliliter. That's 4 milliliters. That's 6. That's 8. That's 10. That's 12. That's 14. That's 16. And we're done. Okay, so we are to trial C. So in the flask I put in 5 mils of peroxide this time and 13 mils of water, but we're going to use twice the amount of Ki. So my syringe now has 2 milliliters of Ki in it. Okay, so we're going to get that stirring. We're going to add this. All right, so we're getting ready to go here. Okay, so we added twice the amount of catalyst this time. Again, there's a little bit of a delay here before we get some bubbles. All right, so the bubbles are starting to form. So again, we'll hopefully see them coming up in the burette funnel here in just a little bit. Okay, so there they go. Right, this is very soothing to watch the bubbles form and go. And now we'll get ready for the timing. Here again, we'll start when it hits the 0 mark. Hopefully you can read the numbers. Okay, so we've started the timer. That's the 0. Okay, so there's the 2 milliliter. There's the 4 milliliter. There's 6 milliliters. There's 8. There's 10. 12. There's 14. One more data point to go. There's 16.